Hey everyone, so I'm here at Rotti's place, and I asked him if he would do some StarCraft history with me, and he said yes. So big thanks to Rotti for doing this. Our setup's a little weird, so it's not going to quite be fluid, but it'll work anyways. So if you've never seen these videos before, basically I just pick a video from the history of StarCraft, and I watch it and go, oh my gosh, I forgot how that is. And then I tell you guys about it, because so many people have only gotten into either Legacy of the Void, or even later than that, right? Like 2020 or something like that. So I figured Rotti's a great introduction into the 2012s. We've already gone through the 10 and 11, both foreign and Korean, and I'm looking at this ESL archives video, and it seems like it could be pretty perfect here. So I don't know, were you at Singapore 2012?
No, that's one of the very few ones that I did not go to.
All right, how about Gamescom?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think. No, I was.
Okay, so
actually, no, I wasn't. That's right when I went to America for NESL.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the first IEMs where I wasn't there.
Interesting.
Or maybe I was. I do remember MVP having a good run in that event. That's when he did all the Thor stuff, and everyone was like, oh my god, he's a genius. I feel like I wasn't there.
How about, I know you were there at, what do you get, 2013 Katowice?
No, that's also...
Shanghai?
That one I think I was, yes.
I definitely know you're at New York.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I was there.
That was at the same time as MLG Orlando, if I recall that correctly.
Yeah, Huck won Orlando, right?
Yeah.
And then this was won by... I actually don't remember the finals that much, or are they?
Hyun, maybe? I feel like a Zerg one.
Yeah, which is why I'm a little confused as why it says Naniwa vs. Life is the grand finals.
That could be. I thought Naniwa lost in the semis, actually.
Yeah, that's also why I'm a bit confused. So, well, we can just watch it anyways. So let's see here. Wow, Innovation Zest is literally something you could have seen 3 years ago. So you were around when the players moved over from Pro League into StarCraft 2.
This game now. Command Center first, very normal from Innovation.
You can just mute this. So it's Apollo caught talking, so I wonder if you're also with them. No, it's Kalaris. Look at Kalaris. Whenever it loads. This actually looks like it's the qualifier.
Yeah, that's the qualifier because that's the studio. That was definitely not our setup.
Yeah, for sure. So this is the qualifier, Asia, and then the open bracket. But you didn't do any of the qualifiers either?
No, because I was in America and those were done from Germany. But yeah, this setup, I was there. I do remember that part.
Oh man. This is very old school. So I think everyone recognizes all the people on the stage, right? But this must have been one of Smix's first events, like big events too.
Yeah. I know probably a couple. I think IPO is where he got started, right?
Perhaps, yeah. As Carmack and Red Eye used to do a ton of events, which if you joined in for Legacy of the Void, you probably didn't see any of them, right?
Maybe the very beginning, like 2016-ish, when they still had some studio events in Germany, but that's about it.
Yeah. So if you don't know, he was a very accomplished broadcaster and host, but ran into some controversy recently, a few years ago. So he kind of disappeared for a little while. But at the time, he was quite respected, I suppose, as one of the best of the hosts. Enjoy an ad, guys. And actually did do a decent job of telling people what they should do. So here we have all of the names from back in the day. To start off, IEM New York. This was at IEM New York Comic-Con, actually,
Yep.
which is why I was there, because my friends and I decided to go Comic-Con, and I was like, oh my god, there's a StarCraft tournament here. I didn't even know. I literally walked in, and I saw StarCraft on the very back. And I remember one of the worst things about this was that they had to get people to leave because the convention actually closed down, but the tournament kept on. So I don't know if you were there for the finals doing the desk or whatever, but did you guys actually just stay in an empty convention hall?
We were I was definitely still there for the finals. I may have even casted it, but that I'm not sure of. But I do remember indeed that being a bit of a drama with people having to leave and ESL being upset over not having any people in the audience. But obviously they were literally escorted out. So
yeah. So some of so this wasn't the one where Huck was winning Orlando. Maybe that was the next one, because obviously he's here. But some of these cool names, so many of them are actually still recognizable. But as you said, Hyun, this I think is where Hyun did his Spider-Man act. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll see that in one of these VODs. But then we also do have Life. And at the time, in 2013, was Life the favorite to win this?
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously people were hyped over Flash as well, but I think that Live was the favorite. And Hyun had a lot of hype because he won every single freaking online tournament. So maybe Hyun and Live.
Okay. I totally forgot that Flash was a part of this too. And there is State, who was a very good player actually from North America for a long time, one of the better representatives of the North American scene. But then he went to Korea and then, I don't know, just kind of like stopped playing at some point, right?
Yeah, he was with Quantic, right? These are kind of like the Quantic days.
Yeah,
They had
yeah.
the gaming house in Oceanside, California, which I visited once, was very good. Maybe a little too fancy for a gaming house, but
They had a lot of money back then, or rather they didn't. But
temporarily.
They pretended that they did, exactly. Yeah. So, and then obviously Nanua was another foreign hero. XQC, QXC is not XQC.
Not to be confused with.
Yes, exactly. So he actually, he was also a representative for the foreigners, the non-Koreans again. And he was known for his run in GSL. Yeah. So that would have happened before this, right?
Well, also the show match, right, with GSL versus the world, like the foreign heroes against the Koreans, and he won like 4 or 5 games or something.
Oh, okay.
Or he had an all kill in one of
Yeah.
that's what was all the hype.
Back in the day, it wasn't called GSO versus the world. It was called the world versus Korea, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah, something like that. So he was really promising. Nowadays, he's actually a board game designer. And apparently his board game is super well respected amongst the circles of board game nerds. So that's pretty cool. TLO having chosen Zerg at this point, right? He was no longer random. Mm-hmm. And then, so many of the players coming in from the Pro League side, which again, if you haven't watched previous episodes, they were only Brood War players, and then everything got swapped over by Force, actually. And then Zest was one of the best ones to come out of that, alongside Hero, both staying on their races that they chose in Brood War. And Flash was also expected to do very well, and technically he did in Pro League, but just never really got to deliver in a lot of tournaments. Only won one tournament internationally. And actually just one tournament in general. So then anyone else, I guess, I don't remember this guy Hack.
No, I was looking at that name and I was like, Hack, for the life of me, I do not remember him. Like, every other name at least rings a bell, and Curious was very good for a while. Uh-huh. Sen had a lot of hype because also the NASL runs, not Sen, but I think San as well, he was alright in NASL, I think. But Hack, I think he's Terran, if I have to make a guess, I'd say he's Terran, but no, he's the only one that's a real question mark out of the 16.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what I would guess anyways. And then we do go into the walkouts. Wow, TLO. He's so fashionable. And that was Smix supposed to have been a translator, actually. She wasn't even hosting.
Smix has not changed at all, by the way. That's unbelievable.
She still looks exactly the same. You know, it doesn't look exactly the same. Good old Kalaris, man. He looks so young. Oh my god.
To be honest, Nate looks still pretty young there as well. Like, if you look at Nate now, it's like, okay, 10 years have gone by.
But then he also looks like he's at least 25, and I'm pretty sure he was like 20, 21.
Yeah, that's true.
So he's always looked a little bit older. How long had Nathanius been in the scene at that point?
This actually is not his first event, because I know he got started in DreamHack, but I honestly think this is one of the first big events in America, at least for Nate. Like, probably his second, third, or first.
Okay. Yeah, pretty big deal.
Nice map pool.
The map pool is amazing. Akalon Waste, Spellshare Vested, Derelict Watcher, Frost. Oh man, I kind of miss Frost. Back when we had 4-player maps, which eventually everyone just agreed that we should get rid of in StarCraft 2.
Which I disagree with, by the way. I feel like all they should have ever done is in 4-player maps, the spawning positions can still be random. It doesn't have to be forced cross-map all the time, but just give a little ping that you at least know where someone spawns on the 4-player map. Then I really wouldn't hate it, because they play out in very different ways, whether it's vertical, horizontal, cross, and obviously sometimes there was like some imbalance here and there, but if the map is big enough, I don't think it matters. The only thing that really sucked is that in that day and age, build orders were obviously so decisive. So you think back of Hawk against Moon at the DreamHack. It's like, okay, you get 6 pulled, you scout him first, you win. You scout him second, it gets close. You scout him last, you're dead. Like, obviously, then 4-player maps are really stupid. But if there was just an indicator of where people spawned, I had no problem with it.
Oh, interesting. Maybe something to think about again as we go on. But Yeah, a lot of these maps, I don't actually remember Polar Night, or I feel like Yansu was played so often, I don't really remember it. But it's kind of funny to see Akalon, Waste, and Frost in the same map pool. I feel like they're drastically different times.
I think Yansu is like half ice, half green, right? And it has a lot of blink stalker surface. If I think of Yansu, I think of a mothership core and stalkers blinking into the main base.
This is also back when the maps felt like they just stuck around forever. So, wow, we're still at the point, because one of the most amazing things was saying at the beginning of GSL in 2010 and seeing the overlay and how bad the observing was, or that they didn't have the clock back in the first year of StarCraft 2. But I didn't realize, just because I've kind of forgotten, they were still on the default overlay even in 2013. So you can still see their hotkeys. You can get rid of the observer here. It's amazing.
Well, the one on the top side of the screen, the scoreboard, or at least the name tags, I guess, that also got added a bit later. That only got added like 6 months into StarCraft, and that was already amazing. Where you start a game and you're like Control R, it's like whoa, like we're professionals now. And ESL was very happy with that. They're like, that's all we ever need: the 2 names at the top and the supply.
Nice. They also didn't have the bars on the production tab initially, which I thought was just, again, something I had never thought of. So you just saw it pop up. Of course, the first they didn't even pop up the production tab, which was even more amazing, because they were like, oh, we want to be like Brood War. But things started to develop. They also started adding a lot of sponsors to this blank space. So at the very least, by 2013, I would have sworn that they would have had the blank spaces filled with their sponsors, but apparently not. So that's news to me. And then we are watching a ZVZ, which I don't think has actually changed all that much. Right. Oh, they had an overlay. Ooh.
Of Roach Hydra, yeah.
Wait, no, they literally changed the overlay. Oh, they just messed up on game 1? What happened?
Yeah.
Wait.
Or maybe they were showing the wrong... Maybe they had an observer, or an observer PC, and they were on the caster PC at first, and then they went to the observer PC.
Okay, that actually... So my timeline's not totally off then. They did have a custom overlay by this point. Which, yeah, this is the one they were using for a long time.
See, they have a dedicated observer as well in Feza.
Yep. And they bring up the name as well as what stage it is. So they're getting used to it. It's interesting they still have all the upgrades, I guess. I don't know what, but this, I remember this overlay, and it did its job, but then it was missing out on a lot of information actually. So they went like too minimalistic. But ZVZ, like I said, I think it's not really changed all that much. It's like Baneling rushes into roaches.
Yeah, but back then it was definitely a lot of Roach Hydra. It almost felt that everybody wanted to get up to Roach Hydra, because going pure Roach was not that great, because obviously Roaches have no range, so you kind of want to have the range units as well, but pure Hydra is too squishy, so kind of the ideal mix between Roaches and Hydras. I think that was the ultimate game plan. No Ravagers, no Lurkers,
right.
Broodlords, very rarely seen. I think they were good, but just very hard to get up to.
Yeah, okay. And there's finally some of the ad usage in the bottom there. I loved Belshir Vestige. I don't know what your opinions were on it. Thought it was great.
Yeah, it was similar to, I think, Ohana in a weird way, but just a slightly better version. But yeah, it was a good map.
Yeah. So, oh wow, they have a death segment. Fancy. Something that we try to have, and then they actually even set up in some of our productions, like last year for Katowice, they actually had it set up, and then we used it once. We just basically never have time, or just kept forgetting about it. So...
Sometimes it's a little bit overkill as well, because I think a lot of the casters, whether it's like the first game, the second game, the third game, you kind of use the beginning of game 2 if nothing happens, with a bit of analysis on the first game. So I kind of feel like you already go over it. And then it's very redundant for the other guys, like, all right, here am I with my TV, let's take another look at what the casters have been discussing for the last 6 minutes. I think that's the main reason why we rarely use it. It can be very cool if it's like a best of 1 and you just want to highlight one thing, but in best of 5s, best of 7s, I feel like casters pretty much talk about everything that was cool anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to talk about in StarCraft. So, I mean, detailing some of the cool moves that are made, I'm sure Apollo's talking about very good things right now. For those of you out there who've actually never seen Apollo, perhaps you've only ever heard whispers of how cool he was or how people used to love him, he was pretty much one of the... the most coveted casters, right? People wanted him at their tournaments, and very well respected. So he was definitely at a lot of them, and then he moved over into a background role for ESL, and now he's head honcho.
One thing that very few people know, or at least maybe some people used to know, now not that common anymore, is that he actually won a gold medal in the World Cyber Games for Command and Conquer.
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
super impressive because the World Cyber Games before StarCraft 2 came out was always the esports tournament of the year. When Grubby won, it was like, oh my god, or Moon. So the fact that he won it in Command and Conquer, I think Generals or the regular Command and Conquer, I don't know, super impressive. And then when he did the very first IEM ever in 2010, where he and TLO actually were the two casters, and Day 9 was there as well. He actually kind of got shed on a little bit. There were a lot of Brood Warrior leaders who were like, oh, who the hell is the British guy? Oh my god, awkward, cringe. But that turned around really quick, like within 3-4 months. Suddenly they're like, hey, the guy's actually kind of good. And then he had the legendary MKP, like, he's playing mech. And everyone's like, oh my god, Apollo's the goat.
Yep.
But that's basically how it all went.
Yeah, okay, that is interesting. He got, I guess, the disrespect from not being part of Brood War, which obviously a lot of people just thought that Brood War people would naturally do better at StarCraft 2. I mean, which had a lot of cases, but then obviously you came from Warcraft and you saw all the people who were good at Warcraft do well. So if you guys didn't know Apollo, if you knew Apollo but didn't know his background, he was a Command and Conquer guy. And then TLO was like a Supreme Commander guy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's, if you even know what that RTS is. So, it's pretty cool. Let's try and find like a PVT. Okay, yeah, there you go. Now we're back to the qualifier. That's my bad. PVT or PVZ, I would say. Was Sanzerd?
Yeah, no, Protoss, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
I think
Sen,
Naniwa won
maybe.
that series because Naniwa made it into the semifinals, and then I think he lost to Life in a close series. Life or Jan, one of the two. So one of those two Zergs was definitely in the final.
Okay, the memory is amazing. But by the way, I totally forgot. I this is my bad, guys, because it was all caps. I didn't know which hero they were talking about, but they finally made the right caps somewhere else, like on this. This is actually Team Liquid hero. So that's my bad. So lowercase h hero, the one that we know, I guess hadn't gotten as good yet. Because Flash and Zest were here and Innovation was here, but this was Team Liquid Hero, which you guys can see here. Pretty famous for his emotions. I mean, he was also good, of course, but he was also famous for his emotions. He actually was, especially for a Korean player, being able to show emotions when he lost, and then, of course, there is life.
He's pretty cool. I'm sorry, but look at him. He's so cool.
Well, Hero? Or Life. Yeah, Life.
He was cool.
He was cool. Yeah. And there's plenty of stories, apparently, where Life literally would get drunk after, gambling and shit the night before. Part of the reasons he was a degen and then he was actually a felon. But he would roll up, apparently, to, a finals, totally hungover and just do his job.
I have one story from about Life from the one BlizzCon where he made it to the finals. I don't know. I think that's the one where he lost to SOS. But basically, he just did an interview after the quarterfinals where it was known that he would play Innovation in the semis, and they asked so how do you feel about it? And he was like, oh, it's so tough, Innovation's so strong, no idea. And then we walked backstage and we had a little garage door we could go through in the Anaheim Convention Center, and there was basically this electric machine protected by a fence, and all of these fences had these signs every 2 meters, no smoking, no smoking. Little Life walks outside, stands in front of it, jeans kind of low, whips out a cigarette, he just stands there right next to the sign. I'm like, hey Life. He's like, hi. I was like, versus Innovation, you're gonna win? He inhales, he looks at me, he's like, of course, easy win. And then he actually went on stage and he actually won the semifinals. Even though in the interview he was all shy and humble.
Sure.
When he stood outside, he was like, easy win. And nobody actually thought he was going to win because Innovation was the favorite for that series. But he was so confident and he did actually destroy him.
Oh, okay. Innovation was the favorite for the series? I mean...
Yeah, there was something about TVZ or just Innovation being an absolute animal back then, that actually he was favored by the majority of the fans back then and the majority of the casters too, of that BlizzCon.
Interesting. Yeah. I just don't remember. All right, so they do their thing, they get in the game, and then witnessing what the development of PVZ... or Protoss in general, because I think Protoss really has changed the most amongst, if we're talking very, very early StarCraft, because literally you guys had a high ground gateway expand for the very, very beginning. Then you guys figured out how to forge fast expand, which is kind of weird because I was actually talking about this in a previous video. Brood War had forge fast expand. So do you remember talking about why that wasn't an immediate exchange over to StarCraft 2?
It happened kind of quickly, actually. I think that people started doing it, but I don't know if the roaches obviously changed a lot, right? At first it was one supply, and maybe the roaches were just too good against it, but it really didn't take very long before people started doing that, because I think of Nazgul, the owner of Team Liquid, literally playing Forge Fast Expand, and he was only playing in the very beginning, so...
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it had to do with the timing of the links or the roaches just being a bit too powerful in the beginning. But it didn't take that long. It's not like it took 6 months before someone was like, let's go for a Forge and a Nexus. And also some of the maps. I mean, if you think of Zelnaga Watchtower or Zelnaga Caverns, how are you going to Forge Fast Expand there? Like, you have to defend like 180 degrees. So you're going to need... That, I think, is the main problem. Metalopolis as well. It's just, there was not one spot. You didn't have a choke point into the natural. So I think that's the main reason for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the maps that were in the first season of GSL that we were looking at, there definitely wasn't a choke point in the natural. No. And then there also, like one of the maps actually had rocks in the back that could be broken.
That's Akelon Waste, I think.
Right? Yeah, you might be right, yeah.
Or Blistering Sands.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say Akelon Waste is actually in this map, which doesn't sound right.
No, Blistering Sands could be it.
Yeah, that was probably it, because it was a sandy one.
Yeah.
So that does make some sense, but it just was fascinating to witness some of the early attempts to break out. And I mean, they actually did, but here you go, guys. We can finally see a Forge Fast Expand in StarCraft 2, which was the dominant opener for a very long time. I mean, when did we start getting gateway expands? Legacy of the Void?
Oh, honestly, well, that's hard actually to say. I have the feeling at one point, Protoss players were not too happy about the fact that it just took so long to get stuff going. Maybe once the Mothership Core became a bit more popular, or that got introduced, that Protoss actually was able to move out with a couple of units and could still recall or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know. It's hard. It's been a long time.
Yes, Legacy of the Void is 7 years old, so that's pretty sick. But it's exactly what it sounds like. You literally get a forge, then a cannon, and a gateway, and then you wall off, which thankfully, as you can see by this time, there's kind of a consensus about what maps should be like. So chokes at the natural, fairly accessible third base. But as we're watching Frost in the lower left mini map, you can see it's one of those 4-player maps. So this is what Rotti was talking about. You don't know where your opponent spawns, so you could get by close by ground basically, or you can get diagonal. So I mean, Frost was pretty big though. It doesn't look like it's extremely dangerous even in this position for the Protoss.
No, I think this is okay, but it also has to do with scouting, because if he did get 6-pulled and you scout him less, then obviously it's going to be very awkward to defend. If you go for a gateway fast expand, that's basically impossible.
Yeah, okay. And so we have now what it looks all to be like a typical Zerg setup, where they actually just kind of get to 3 bases as soon as possible, whereas just a year and a half ago, back in the 2011 VODs we were watching, the Zerg players stuck on 2 bases for a very long time.
What is this? Like, we just make a Zealot, we run it to the other side, that's our scout or something? Like, what are we doing here?
I think that is literally what it is, a scout. And then it tries to, I guess it wanted to tuck itself in and get the drone, but that didn't work out. I'm going to listen to the casters, because honestly, listening to some of the exclamations they have, where they're like, excellent micro, is amazing.
So it does look very normal here from Hero. Zealot has found its way to the third, but no.
He tried to get some good positioning in those mineral lines.
It was exactly what I said.
This entire build is so funny as well, because if you look at the clock, right, how slow the game was. We're 6.5 minutes in, and now the first Phoenix is in production. Like, if you explain this to pros in 2023, it's like, what is a single Phoenix going to do against a 3-base Zerg? Like, that's kind of wild to think of.
Yeah, this is also before they changed the time. So before the time change, Legacy of the Void, this actually would have been something like, I guess, 3.5? 4 minutes.
Yeah, at least like 4 minutes in.
Yeah, exactly, 4 minutes. So that's really hard, because you're absolutely right, though. Like, the pacing of the game was also very different. So, yeah, there's the timing of it, but then no doubt about it, Fruit Dealer was going 2-base Muta as, like, a macro build. And, like, whether or not the time...
towards the end, you didn't quite see it. Of course, it would have to be
a moot point. It was just a weird thing that was happening back in the day. So, okay, what are we actually watching? Because I certainly don't remember much from Protoss back in the day.
I'm assuming that this is going to be Phoenix Colossus, because Colossus were very good. There's a Mothership Core on the way, by the way.
Yeah.
We've got +1. I don't think we'll see like Zealots with +1. That would very surprise me. It took people a long time to realize that Zealots +1 and Charge and Phoenix are actually very good. So I assume that we're just going to drop a Robobay and make some Colossus.
Oh, yeah, you're right about that. So, what was I going to say? Back in the day, you said that they don't really go for the ground-based warpins very often. Like, Protoss was 2-base, right? We're in Heart of the Swarm. So we're talking about the Mothership Core, which... Are we in Heart of the Swarm for Mothership Core? Like, it's got to be.
Yeah.
So it's like, I didn't realize that the Forge Fast Expand went that long. That entire era.
Maybe it was a 4-player map thing in general, because there's a good chance that maybe on a 2-player, if we see another game, I don't think it was every game Forge Fast Expand. I'd be very surprised if that was the case.
Okay, no, that's actually an excellent point. Although I'm looking at this one too, Belshir, and it's also that. So maybe gateways were coming into play. Maybe Hero was kind of an old school type of guy. I'm not sure, but. Anyways, the Mothership Core was basically the only thing Protoss had in the early game, and it was kind of a silly unit. I mean, you might hear people talk about it. It upgrades to the Mothership, which of course now just gets from the Nexus once you have a fleet beacon. But back in the day, the Mothership Core popped out really quickly. It was the only defense early on. It was also one of your few scouts, because the depths didn't exist. And then you could do forms of light harassment. But the real power behind the Mothership, Mothership Core that people hated, was the overcharging of the pylon. Yeah. So I don't know if this is the meta.
No, this might be the one where you overcharge the Nexus. Because it has gone through so many changes, right? I feel like the pylon overcharge was a Legacy of the Void thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh no, you're right. Yes, it was, because that's when the Carbot made the joke Legacy of the Void intro with the probe. But I think you're right. It was only Legacy of the Void. So this would have been the Nexus, which people I think were generally okay with.
It lasted a long time, and the range was pretty insane on it.
Okay.
Like, it wasn't like that it's ultra powerful. It's super annoying. It reminds me a little bit of like an undead main base in Warcraft 3. Once you've upgraded it once or twice, whether it's tier 2, it's just there. It shoots all the time, has a slow shot. And like, it doesn't really hurt, but you can't kill units anymore. You can never kill the main. So I feel like people kind of hated this overcharge too, especially Terrans, because they couldn't really drop.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that I definitely remember. Trying to enter into a Protoss main and then just being like, yep, that's dead. It had time warp, so we can actually witness a little bit of a battle going on here with some of the background audio.
Roach is up in tandem as well to actually shut this
down. The Mothership did very little damage, by the way, if you're watching it shoot. It was a poke.
Big warp behind all of this, and he's going to chase this down and completely push it off. Trying to chase down that Immortal.
It's actually kind of comical watching how small the Zerg army is. I mean, I guess a lot of the Protoss units are supplemental, but...
I feel like there's a lot still making their way to the other side of the map, and on 34 Zerglings in production. But yeah, this definitely does not feel like a crazy amount of roaches.
It's actually a pretty cool micro right there, which you can do in Legacy of the Void, to be clear, but he raised the Immortal, so it's not being targeted. Good. Yeah, the time warp was a very good spell. It also had recall. I was trying to remember what the third one was, so it helped out. And then everything else you see here is pretty much normal. The Colossus would have had more range, is the only thing, as default, I should say. So this just still looks like such a weird battle.
Yeah, because suddenly a Colossus died to a Zergling. It really did not feel it was a good engagement at all by the Zerg. There we go. Overcharge on the Nexus.
And then
look at the range. Look at the range.
Why didn't you just do that in the first place? Like, pull back to it. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was long. That reaches all the way up to the rocks, guys. Yeah. Oh my god. This just also just isn't that impressive of an army. I mean, I just 7 years Legacy of the Void without Ravagers.
A Viper.
Yeah, Vipers were introduced in Legacy or in Heart of the Swarm. Back then in Wings of Liberty, all you had to do was mass roaches and then get corruptors. It was a very, very basic, very boring dynamic, in my opinion. And then Hydras, which do not turn into lurkers. And then I guess this is kind of even. Duck's pretty good, though.
I love how they made one Viper. It's like, one abduct!
Literally, yeah.
Crazy to see how important the sentry was. I think that's like the biggest difference between early day Protoss against Zerg and these days. Because for like years and years and years, it was all about force field. Sentries, force field, sentry, force field. And then obviously with the Ravager, it's not that force fields are bad in Legacy right now, but back then it was everything.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the War Prism didn't have their range pickup, right?
No.
Yeah. So you're seeing some War Prism micro from Hero, but it's a lot more difficult when having to go over it, because that acceleration, like stopping completely and then having to accelerate again, that's the most painful part about War Prism micro. So, I mean, kind of like more impressive back in the day, but not that it isn't impressive now.
I'm kind of impressed that Life was able to win that game, because the initial Roach Link fight looked terrible.
Looks very bad. And then I don't know if we're gonna get Hero crying, because Life apparently wins this one. It is the quarterfinal, so he's his last life.
There's a very good chance that Life won this entire tournament, unless he lost his EVZ against Xian, because the other semi must have been Jan against Naniwa. And I think the final was ZVZ. Maybe Hyun won.
What is his composition? He's literally Colossus Void right now, the Protoss one. I guess to protect his...
I mean, it was pretty good because Parasitic Bomb wasn't really a thing very often. And they would often go for Infested Terrans. You have Colossus against that. And against the Corruptors, which was still basically the main anti-air, and you get a whole bunch of Void Rays. But once Infestors were out, Fungal was just kind of good against everything.
Yeah, back when it was... Actually, it didn't look like it was instant there. Maybe I missed it, but I thought I saw a Fungal go out. Those are Infested Terrans, actually. So it used to be instant and permanent root.
You can see the projectile here.
Yeah. So then they changed it to a projectile, which at least gave you some chance to micro. But we do see Hero lose this one. He doesn't get too emotional by the looks of it. No tears. No tears. But this actually reminds me of one thing that I think you might have strong opinions on. Do you remember the era of it was basically always Hero versus Puma? And what did Husky call it? The stupid build, the 1-1-1 build?
I have no idea what Husky called it.
I know you. Yeah.
I know the 1-1-1 build, but I don't know what Husky called it.
Yeah, it was. We called it something really stupid.
I do remember this very well because we were in Sweden. I was at that event, and the final was Hero against Puma. And then a week later, the finals of NASL Season 2 were in Rancho Cucamonga in California. And then the final was again Hero against Puma.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, okay, that's why I remember. That's why it's so just synonymous to me with this time period, because they just played all the time. It was a pretty cool crowd. This is actually a hall just for StarCraft.
Yep, right next to it's basically where we were last week. But then they have a side hall where they have this stadium.
Okay.
They still have that in Yon Shopping.
Okay, cool. Hey, we have some updates on the overlay. So this is a little before, I guess. This would have been
2011.
2011. Yep, exactly that. Final match, and we have some little webcams going on there. It's a nice touch. Oh God, with this. Oh, I hate this map. I hated this map so much. I remember so many Broodlord Infestor maps on this. Builds, rather. But what was really popular, and we might see it here if I continue scrolling, is that Puma was a master of this 1-1-1 build. And Protoss had the toughest time defending against it. And had a really stupid name that Husky gave a nickname to. So you guys probably actually know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're going to be spamming the comments with it. But I just remember it being considered really overpowered, actually. Only the best could stop it. So what are your opinions on that?
The 1-1-1 was very good. Because indeed, basically, TVP was played in the first year where it's Terran's going to do this. Protoss kind of knows. And it's still ultra difficult to stop it. Mostly because the SCVs that were pulled as well. There was, I think, a solid way to blind counter it because they often started off with Cloaked Banshees. So if you were very greedy as a Protoss and you would go for a Phoenix and an Observer at the same time. I never forget that I stole 80 points of happy ones after one game because he was rank 1 on the European server, and I knew he was going to do Cloak Banshee into 1-1-1 of a 1 base all in, and I had no units, but I had a Phoenix and an Observer just in time, and then I killed 2 Cloak Banshees while not losing anything. So that was a good way, but I mean, it's funny that we got so excited over it because it was actually very boring when you think about it. It was almost every game was a 1 base all in. This is already a little bit later, so I guess the game evolved a tiny bit beyond that because we actually see expanse, but it was A, very strong, and B, very boring.
I don't know what the hell happened in this game though, but I'm looking at the production tab and it does confuse me. It's 2 base, bio, no starport, ghosts getting the same time as combat shields. So I didn't think much happened. Hero did a little stalker poke, but just this is a Puma build. I mean, Puma was just known for all-inning a lot. Eventually became kind of a sniper for EG, but then his time had kind of passed. So he eventually retired. But this is a wonky build. It's back when Ghosts had their not quite actually as good of EMP, but still pretty good. We can see also a big difference. Not a big difference, I should say, but a noticeable difference. There's no upgrades that are colored. At some point in time, Blizzard realized that it might be a nice additional feature, so they started coloring the upgrades for level 2 and 3, which is quite nice. They also cheapened the upgrades for Protoss and then kind of bounced back between cheaping them and not cheaping them. But yeah, a lot of the early game PVTs apparently we're still at that stage. We're at a lot on force fields, keeping the Protoss alive. So that was a fun time, especially on 1 bases back in 2010.
I had no idea about these ghosts either, and I'm thinking, does he even have EMP here, or does he need to research something?
I think you have to research it, right?
But I don't think he did. So like maybe he wanted to land an EMP on the sentries, and if the sentries are that important, maybe that somewhat makes sense. But I didn't see a single EMP go down, so then I really don't know why he went for the very early ghost.
I don't know if the commentators say anything.
So Puma's really pushing it here strategically.
Yeah, there are bluffs upon bluffs. He's trying to perform Inception upon Puma while Puma is awake, and I'm not sure if it's going to work.
I have no idea, but
I mean, it's basically
I have to say I'm kind of impressed with it.
It was a safe, weird 3-Rex, right, coming out of Puma, because he goes for a fast expand, but then he still has 2 more barracks. So in a weird way, we just did a 3-Rex with an in-base expand.
Yeah, I guess so. What is this that pops up? Remember this?
No, I saw earlier the fence support thing, and then maybe they had a prediction game for like if there was going to be cheese as well or not. I have no idea.
Okay. And this is what I was talking about with the, if I just get rid of the camera for a second. This was the sponsor stuff that I was talking about. They started taking up the, not necessary space. You didn't need to see what a barracks was producing. You're right, I don't know what the ghost ended up being for, but they were saying that there was a bunch of mind games. I'm just going to assume that they were correct. And then the ghosts were never used. The upgrade never happened. Classic planetary at the 3rd base. Good old days. There's a little some color.
Yeah.
But it's like, it almost looks juvenile in comparison to what we currently have. That was one of those examples anyways. And then maybe Muslim versus TLO. If you guys didn't know, the Muslim was actually a very good Terran. Call him the Devil Terran.
I don't remember this show much happening there. I don't even really remember Ben being in New York. It's very confusing to me.
Well, apparently happened.
Oh, still has hair. Oh my goodness.
Wearing the good old EG jacket.
So I guess they played TVZ. I can only assume that Ben won though, right?
Well, we're going to find out. I don't know who was considered better.
I think Ben, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, TLO definitely was very good and had his moments, but I feel that especially in this matchup, I think Ben had some very strong moments. Now, that was not the best fight for Benjamin Baker, to be totally honest.
Wouldn't Mind's made a big appearance, obviously, when they first were released in Heart of the Swarm, but then also Heart of the Swarm meta. Before it got to the very, very boring mech versus Swarm host meta, it was actually very exciting. If we got bio, we also had Zergs go mass muta, which was exciting to watch, but very frustrating to play against. Because at some point, if the Zerg overwhelmed the map, and if we're talking about like 4-player maps, they're pretty big, they would get like 30 mutas. And then the only hope was either to force a direct fight when you have Thors, which, happened, or to plant 4 Widow Mines around your bases and hope that it popped off. There's some pretty famous examples of these things happening, actually, which is pretty nice.
What I do remember from this era, and I sometimes still refer to it, is that Pold and Jaedong used to play all the freaking time. Yeah. And it was always like, Jaedong's winning, never mind, Pold comes back. And after like the 7th time, I was like, I think Lairtag Zerg just doesn't beat 3-3 bio, guys.
Yeah.
Like, we had a very hard time accepting it. We're like, how does he do it over and over again? And then it happened so many times. I was like, maybe like, the fact that Jaedong is on 2-2 and Paul is on 3-3 is what's allowing these crazy, miraculous comebacks.
Yeah. Oh, there's actually some really crazy games. This was also a time where I think, I remember Leenock having a really good run at maybe the next IEM New York that happened. Yeah. And that was when Baneling drops were really popular on top of Protoss Army. So him versus Naniwa was actually a very fun series. And then it looks like Terran actually lost this one.
Oh, Benny. Oh, Ben.
But you don't even remember that show match happening.
No.
Oh, they literally have Spider Hyun in Fest New York. I'm glad they put that on the playlist. Back in the day, it was very similar. We were asking everyone to do sillier stuff than they currently do. And so I remember this, Hyun versus the DRG. And of course, everyone enjoyed it. Literally, this was the highlight of StarCraft for about 2 months. It was fun, though.
If you type in Hyun versus Life, because I'm pretty sure that was the final.
Okay. Taipei?
No.
Group A?
Not even Hyun semi-final. Maybe it was Hyun against Curious then or something. Must have been a CBC final.
Yeah, I actually struggled to remember what it was.
I do think that this one came down to 6 pull. Yeah, I think Naniwa got 6 pulled. It was a 3-2. I think this was a very good series.
Oh, I do remember Polar Knight. Oh, Polar Knight had the back base. If you look on the mini map, which is kind of hard with the quality, but you just go behind the base in the back, and there are some cheeses that would happen there. It was interesting. Apparently, we did have a gateway expand.
Yeah, see?
Yeah. Maybe Hero was just more old school.
Double Stargate Void Ray!
The best you can get. Okay. And then Derelict Watcher. That's a terrible looking map. My goodness. I don't remember this map.
That was pretty fun to play. It's just very, very wide open.
Yeah, no.
Like Protoss really struggled, obviously going up to 3 bases. But we weren't that time pressed to go up to 3 bases because obviously the minerals in the main and natural don't run out that quickly. So you could actually build a terrifying army on 2 bases and then just slowly go up to 3.
Yeah, sometimes I forget just how much you could build on 2 bases. It really was not such an issue. Apparently a pretty good series.
Yeah, it was a 3-2, I think. Naniwa did this.
What?
Did Naniwa win?
Yeah, it looks like he's being interviewed.
Okay, then it was Naniwa live in the grand finals, and then and then live beat him. Yeah, that makes sense.
I did. I thought I remembered watching Naniwa, but while I was being escorted out of the convention center. So it's weird that they have this. Oh no, it was labeled correctly.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I do believe we had a 6 pull in here.
Okay.
And I think.
Did Naniwa get tilted?
Yeah, obviously.
I haven't actually seen you. You were definitely casting this one.
Yeah, I was there.
Is this Todd? What is it?
Always very strong showing from him.
Maybe I was at a different New York, because I have definitely done an IEM New York at the Javits Center, but I feel like I was here.
I really feel like you were.
Yeah.
You can just Google it. Obviously, there's multiple ones. But all right, so 8 was in 2013, so this was it. And this is before they started labeling the commentators. Oh, here it is.
No, I wasn't there. I was at the one before then, or the one after.
Wow. Okay.
But where was I then? Was there an NASL event happening? What is the date? Let me just take a look at the date. 10th of October 2013. I don't know what I was doing. But I definitely did an IEM in New York, in the Javits Center.
Yeah, for sure. You and Mr. Bitter were duo casting.
And that was the one, indeed, at the same time that Hawk had the MLG.
Yeah.
Because there was I used to do the IEM events in the very beginning, but then when I made the transfer over to NASL together with Mr. Bitter, I wouldn't say that we were blacklisted, but basically they decided to go with their own talent and maybe went with some different casters at first. And basically, almost an entire year went by before Mr. Bitter and I came back to the IEM events. So I guess this was in that one period between 2012 and 2014 before I started doing them again.
Okay.
And it's also because NASL was very weird about it. ESL would reach out, they're like, hey, can we hire? And then NASL wanted money from ESL because we were their employees. So it wasn't just that they had to pay Mr. Bitter and I, they also had to pay NASL, and obviously they didn't want to do that. Yeah, I know.
That is very weird.
There's a reason why they're not around anymore, ZombieGrub.
One of many. Dude, what is this upgrade?
Swarm host, no? That it goes longer. I think they...
Extended duration?
Yeah, extended duration.
I don't remember.
Well, that's my first guess, and often the first guess is correct. I think then they stick around way longer.
Okay. I don't remember that one at all. Is this the 6 pool? No, it wasn't the 6 pool. That's what I was looking for, and then I just saw this upgrade.
I think maybe the last game was a cheeky one.
Okay. No, this was the last game. It looks like it was.
Something happened in one of these games that really tilted Naniwa, at least.
That I believe, 100%. But honestly, just dealing with swarm hosts, I mean, they never not got annoying. Even nowadays, if someone has to deal with swarm hosts, pretty tilting. But Life was absolutely the type of guy who'd throw in a cheese too.
Yeah, I mean, he did it against SOS in the BlizzCon final, and it backfired. It was just kind of sad. Maybe Naniwa was just very tilted over swarm host. That could be it.
Probably was it. And you can see that the endgame compositions actually aren't too bad.
I think this game was, I don't know if this is the specific one I'm thinking of, but they had an epic game once on this map, but maybe I'm thinking of an event in DreamHack, where it started off like this, then we got a mass Muta switch, then we went back to Ultras, then we went back to Mutas. Like, I remember watching it with Froden, I was like, oh my god, the Naniwa live game was like the best game I've ever seen. I don't know if it's this one. It's like different switches. It doesn't look like this one is long enough, but...
Yeah. He already looks tilted. Maybe it was this one. Not being able to defend the Ultras and Queens and Roaches going up a ramp into his natural in third base. I didn't remember so many Queen pools.
Same. Actually, that's very surprising to me.
Apparently, they've always been a nuisance. Obviously, pretty much fixed at this point, but we still have a couple. Because this was a Nidus Storm, actually. They can transfuse off of Creep. Infested Terran, still pretty broken. I don't know. This might have been after they got the upgrades removed, though.
The man was ahead of his time.
Well, yeah. I mean, imagine if life had not been what he is and how he would perform in Legacy of the Void. I mean, I think he'd be very good.
Yes.
I think we kind of did the entire IEM. So it's been 40 minutes, which I always shoot for like 30 minutes, but it is what it is, right? Only get one opportunity to be in Rotterdam with Rotti at his house. So thank you so much for joining me for this history lesson. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. So see you guys around for the next one, hopefully with some other guests. Bye.